This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the AIPIS show for accredited income property investment specialists and those who aspire to be. If you're a real estate, mortgage, or financial professional, this is the place for you. We'll explore innovative investment analysis, sales, marketing, and income-generating strategies for the most historically proven wealth creator, income property. Learn from the experts as they show you how to build a better business and a better life.
It's my pleasure to welcome one of our investment counselors back to the show, and that is Doug. You've heard him on the show for maybe 10 years now, on and off, and you also may have seen him speak live at our conferences. He's the guy that does the portfolio builder game and all those great games that have entertained so many of you, and so many of you have really said some very positive things about those. And Doug, you know the challenge. We've got our virtual Meet the Masters coming up, and your challenge is to do the game, or a game, because you always modify it a little bit every time, which is really nice for our regulars that keep coming back over and over. We want them to have something new, not just the same old thing over and over again. And I don't know what your plan is for virtual Meet the Masters, but this is the first time you'll be doing the portfolio builder game, or maybe you're changing the name too, virtually, right? So
exactly. Yes. Virtual's coming up. Well, one of the things that we're really trying to orient our challenge around is getting people to really take action, because as you said, right, there's not a bad time to buy real estate, but we are really at almost a mother of all buying opportunities, not because prices are depressed like they were in 2010 and 11, but more because, we're really on the precipice of a multi-year, possibly a generation-long migration away from urban cores out towards suburban areas. And so this is really probably one of the better times in the past 30 or 40 years to purchase the kind of real estate that we offer, the detached single-family residential rentals. Yeah, no, it's really, nobody wants to live in a high-density area anymore. It used to just be about coronavirus and that fear, but now it's also about civil unrest. And when you see what's happening in some of these cities, it is just really scary. I mean, the police are literally giving up, pulling out. Like I said on the show recently, if there ever was a reason to go buy a gun or five, and get trained on how to use it and have adequate ammunition, it might be now, because we are really seeing another time where the police either can't or just won't protect you. And that's pretty scary. Now, I'm looking at the world falling apart. We're all seeing that from our own perspective, because we all live in different places and we all have different lives. And people have asked me, well, how you doing over the past several months? I've heard that a lot. And it's like, I'm fine. My life hasn't, other than not getting on an airplane, which I actually appreciate and like, my life is quite fine. I mean, I live in suburbia and everything's quite nice around here. No problems whatsoever. Everything's great. But I tell you, if I lived in a city, it doesn't even have to be a big city or super high density. If I lived in a suburban apartment complex or condo complex that was 4 stories high and I needed to take an elevator or go down a hallway, I wouldn't feel that comfortable. And then you add civil unrest to that, and wow, it's it's a 1-2 punch, isn't it? Well, and I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately, because of course, all the people in the media are trying to make it about quote white America versus quote black America or Hispanic America or whoever. Yeah, they're trying to make a race war when there isn't one. It's ridiculous. Exactly. Yeah. But what it's really about is affluent versus everybody else, which incidentally, everybody else includes many people in the Caucasian ethnic group who are disproportionately represented in the affluent class. Yep. But one of the things that has really kind of popped out to me is that what we're really seeing is we're seeing the
ultimate collapse of, what I call the middle class fiction. Of course, the middle class fiction is that, right? Okay, you go to school, you go to a good college, you get a great corporate job, you go up, have your career path, then you retire with a ton of money. In all actuality, what happens is you go to college, you take up on a ton of debt. You basically have a raffle ticket, and that raffle ticket says, hey, I have a chance at a corporate job, but if I don't get that corporate job, I will probably end up doing something that I didn't need to go to college for, and everything I needed to know I could have learned on the internet for free.
Yeah.
So, and let's say that you do
by
get
the
that
way,
corporate job.
I just mentioned, I have my criticisms of Elon Musk, but I'll tell you one thing. He claims, I was watching a documentary about him, he says he learned rocket science by watching YouTube. Isn't that amazing? I mean, he is an engineer, okay? But we live in this it's an amazing time to be alive, where we live in this amazing era where your fellow citizens will just teach you everything. Learning has become a peer-to-peer experience. And that's just a wonderful thing. You don't need a professor to teach you this stuff anymore. Now, in some cases you do for the credential, but not for the actual knowledge necessarily. So you're talking about that raffle ticket to the middle class fiction, right? Go ahead.
Exactly. Well, and so because what happens is, right, you go through a normal career path and, say you're at a corporation and, and you took on a whole bunch of debt, but you're making good money. So you're paying it off. It's not a big deal.
Right.
You get promoted a few times, you go up through the ranks. And then at some point, something happens like there's 40 million people unemployed and everybody needs to cut payroll because, their revenue just went down by 40%. Well, in all likelihood, what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, who's making the most money? Those are the people who have seniority. And then at some point you'll get pushed off the books. If you're one of the extremely small percent that managed to make it up high enough in the chain to where you're the one deciding who gets let go before a lot of people get let go, you might be able to make it. But again, that's a raffle ticket inside of a raffle ticket. And what's happened is there's so many people chasing after kind of this, this paper fantasy that it's escalated the cost of college. It's escalated the cost of a whole bunch of other things when in all likelihood, this is largely a delusion that's all coming unraveled at the same time.
Yeah, sadly it is. The middle class fiction, that's a really good way to put it.
Corporate America is not going back to what it used to be.
No, nothing's going back to what it used to be. This is a mega shift, folks. And I just recognized that pretty early because for many years after this, there is going to be a degree of post-traumatic stress disorder, a PTSD that is not going away with a vaccine, and it's not going away with race reparations, and it's not going away with Joe Biden as president or anybody else. It's deep in the culture. And California is sort of a good example of this in a negative way. It's a good example of a bad thing. And what California, my home state, has become is a banana republic. And a banana republic speaks of this concept where you have the rich elite class and then you have the peasants. Okay. And the middle class has just been hollowing out for years. And what we're here to help people do, to guide them through this process of not getting hollowed out, to help them get up into the upper middle class, or if they're already there, to get up into the wealthy class. And there are various definitions of, ultra wealthy is usually considered $30 million net worth and above. And, there are various tiers of this. But look, we want to be people's guide, and we've, done it for a couple thousand people already. And hopefully we're going to do it for someone new listening, to make sure that they are secure and their lifestyle moves up. Well, the whole middle class is just being hollowed out. And it's been going on for a few decades now. And it's that middle class fiction. And Doug, the other thing is we are going to have more opportunities as we did during the Great Recession 12 years ago. I had a lot of listeners listening to the podcast asking, hey, Jason, I love everything you're saying about real estate, but right now times are tough and I need a side hustle. I need another income stream.
so that I can do more investing. So I started making some of the podcast episodes about home-based business opportunities and side hustles, if you will. And I've done that a little bit so far now. We talked about the tax deeds. We talked about some other things that people can do to create wealth for themselves. And so you'll see more of that coming up. But Doug, more on that middle-class fiction, and then let's get to rent payments and inflation. We got some stuff to talk about there.
Yeah, sure. And the thing that I'm just really seeing is, with all this coming unwound, there's been a lot of perceived stability in corporate employment that is just coming to an abrupt end for a lot of people. And one thing or opportunity a lot of people have is that, if you have been displaced, you're able to put your primary mortgages under forbearance. And the forbearance guideline is actually going to go for quite a while. So there's a lot of people who really have an opportunity to remake their life. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like your whole financial world's coming apart. But there's actually a really big opportunity that I hope a lot of people will take advantage of.
America is really good at second chances. A lot of people have emerged from a history where they've had real struggles. And that it's a pretty resilient economy because it gives those second chances. Whereas some other countries, if you're ruined once, you're never going to have the chance to be ruined again. Yeah. In other words, you're ruined forever. It's over. But, the U.S. is pretty forgiving like that. And that's a good thing, I guess. But remember, forbearance is not without its consequences. Okay.
No, it's not.
If you're wanting to buy income properties, the word on the street is do not enter a forbearance program. Do not do that because it's going to inhibit your ability to get more financing for future purchases, and you don't want to miss out on this opportunity here as we experience what John Burns called the Great American Move. We are in the midst of the Great American Move. Well, we're at the beginning of it. It's going to be hugely significant. And we're going to share with you on upcoming episodes about moving stats and how the movers are doing. If you're in the moving business, if you're in that industry, you're probably already seeing that you're very, very busy now. If you own a U-Haul franchise and rent trucks, you're, good for you. You're going to do quite well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and because moving on to one of the other things we were planning on talking about was just the rent stability.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that we were looking at was, what's the percentage of rent that was paid on time, and it's actually really close to last year. I think it went from something like 82% down to 80%. I mean, that's an almost imperceptible difference.
It's amazing, Doug. So let's be specific. So May of 2019, rent collections. Now, remember, this is going to be a survey of multifamily units. This is not for single-family homes. Again, the reason for that is that single-family homes don't report to any big centralized place. So when they do these surveys, and this one is from the National Multifamily Housing Council, that's a trade group. Okay. And so, they have lobbyists and they have conferences and they keep statistics. Okay. And what they'll do is they'll survey their big institutional landlords and they will share the numbers on their rent collection. So again, single family home rent collection, I will guarantee you is far better than these numbers. Far better, because we've noticed it ourselves with our own clients and in my own portfolio. I'm not having any rent collection problems. I expected it, yet the rents are all coming in. On the apartments, you have a more transient, lower quality tenant base. So, collection is never going to be as good, and you're always going to have more move-ins, move-outs. Apartments are temporary. Single-family homes are more permanent. But May of 2019, 81.7% made their rent payment. Now, this chart doesn't show how much time that was. Like, in other words, it says week ending on the 6th of the month. So it does show that. So by the 6th of the month in 2019, May, 81.7% of tenants in these large institutional apartments made their rent payment. Now, fast forward, and Doug, I'll let you share this one. May of 2020, tell us what happened.
Let's see. So when we go into May of 2020, the number is 80.2%. So that's
It's like
barely
insignificant.
It's insignificant. It's nothing. It's noise.
So you're saying to me, Doug, that 0.5% deterioration in the rental market in May, year over year.
Something like that, yeah. It's let's see. Let's look at the exact numbers. So if we're talking 81.7 down to 80.2, that's 1.5%. That's the total deterioration.
Oh, sorry. You're right. Yeah, 1.5%.
Even that isn't that. I mean,
it's nothing. Yeah.
Well, in fact, even this. Okay, so look at this. In April rent collections were 78%, and they went up to 80.2.
Yeah.
And so the decline from May 19 to May 20 is less than the increase from April 20 to May 20.
Yeah, it's insignificant. It's the news media would love to make a story out of this, but there just isn't a story there. You know where there's a story is in the commercial world. I've shared that on the show. You know, the commercial landlords are just not paying their rent. Commercial tenants, I mean, whether it be an office space. I just read an article about all the law firms defaulting on their rent. You know, obviously in the retail and the restaurant rentals, they're just not paying. So the landlords are really suffering there. But in residential, the home is the center of the universe, and people want to keep the home. And interestingly, even if they know they can't get evicted at the moment, it seems as though they're either just doing the right thing and being good moral people, good citizens, or they just don't want to ruin the relationship with their landlord for future months. And that may be the other reason, you know, because those moratoriums have been lifting, obviously. So let's look at June over June. Tell us about June 2019 to June 2020.
So when we go June 2019, that was 81.6% last year, down to 80.8%. So this means that June is up 0.6% sequentially May to June, and it is down only 0.8%. year over year.
Okay. So not even a 1% difference year over year. Now, in 2019, we didn't have a pandemic at this time of year. We did not have a race war. We did not have civil unrest. And in the month of June, the rent collection difference by the 6th of the month is less than 1%. Doug, as they say on the old Wendy's commercial with the little old lady, where's the beef? There's nothing.
Yeah, there's not a story here.
Yeah. It reminds me of that famous song from the 80s, Let's Give Them Something to Talk About. You know the one?
Right. Yeah. Yes,
there's nothing to talk about here, folks. Move on. There's just nothing. We'd like to give them something to talk about, but there isn't a story. Okay, so rent collection is strong, thankfully. That's good news. Doug, we got to wrap up fairly soon. I think you're in a bit of a time crunch, but you want to talk about inflation real quickly?
Sure thing. So one of the things, a beautiful chart that we saw was looking at some different inflation by sectors. And the sectors that had the high inflation were, groceries, meats, were medical care services, and then gardening and lawn care. Makes sense because all those are things that have been buoyed up by people staying at home. But then on the other hand, our lower inflation sectors or deflationary sectors have been energy, which just dropped like a rock.
Oh, yeah.
And then apparels, hotels, airlines, car rentals, auto insurance, those things just plummeted. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I think that
motor vehicle insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Is that all of the areas that have been strong are areas that are associated with people at their home. Mm-hmm. And so I think what that's doing is that's really showing us that, hey, in a really stressful time, real estate has, the income real estate that we recommend has tremendous resilience.
Oh, yeah.
As I'm fond of saying, right, you don't really know if a strategy works until you have a stress test.
Right.
And you don't get stress tests all that often. Mm-hmm. Anything can look good when you're in, when you're in a growing market, but it's when you have a big disruption that you find out whether what you're doing makes sense.
It's I think it's Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger who says it's when the tide goes out, you can see who's wearing a swimsuit or not, right? Or something like that, right?
Yeah. It's not until the time goes out that you find out who's swimming naked.
And folks, I mean, look, it could be worse than this with what's going on in the world, but it couldn't be much worse than this. I mean, yes, we could have a war, and there are definitely tensions. I mean, we've got North Korea again going off the deep end. We've got Iran. There's definitely geopolitical concerns. But we have a global pandemic. We have civil unrest, not only in the U.S., but all over the world. We have austerity measures. I mean, the world, in a lot of ways, it doesn't look very good right now. Okay. And yet we see all this. Let me just give you a soundbite on each of these charts. Okay. So higher inflation sectors, food up 4.8%. Groceries are at the highest price in 5 decades. I've totally noticed that myself as I've been shopping. I go to Trader Joe's, and just anecdotally, I buy pretty much the same pattern of groceries. I don't change it too much. Anecdotally, Trader Joe's, I'd get 2 bags of groceries, and I'd have some wine in there and some nice things, and it'd be $100. Now it's $160. I did not change my cart around that much, or what's in those bags. I've definitely noticed that myself. I know everybody listening has. So meat prices up 11.7%. Now, that one, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because there have been specific problems to the meat industry. So that one's a bit of an anomaly. I don't want to say that's inflation based completely. But healthcare, medical services, up 5.9%. Who says there's no inflation? This is crazy. Like you said, Doug, gardening and lawn care up 9.7%. I don't know why that is. That doesn't seem like it would be a coronavirus related. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, I think it all has to do with the fact that people are stuck at their house, and so they're trying to take care. They're trying to take care of their property. I know for us, I'm
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and so in this case, right? If you're talking about gardening and lawn care services, now's the time to do projects.
Right.
If you're stuck at home, it's a time to do projects. Whenever I go to Home Depot or Lowe's, the place is just packed.
Oh, really?
There's people. Oh, yeah. There's people that are getting stuff for doing home projects all over the place. Yeah. I know, because I was at Lowe's trying to get the polymeric sand for doing a project at our back patio about a month back.
What is polymeric sand?
It is sand that has plastic polymers in it. So what you do is you put it in between paver stones, and then when you get it wet, then the polymers bond together, and so you basically have self-sticking sand.
Got it. Isn't that, boy, technology's everywhere, isn't it? That's amazing.
Exactly.
It's an amazing time to be alive. But yes,
technology sand.
As the home is becoming the center of the universe, people want to make it nice. I've been saying this for a couple of months now. Home improvement projects, not specifically, like I haven't been to a hardware store like you have, but that doesn't surprise me too much. Remodel projects, okay, that's going to be big soon, or just moving instead. That's the easier one. And furniture, stuff for the home. If you're in the home goods business, you're going to do pretty well. Okay, go ahead.
Think about it like this, Jason. If you live in a apartment or condo in the middle of a city, then moving is the ultimate remodel project.
Right. It's much easier than remodeling.
Exactly. Because what you've done is you've just gone from a 500 square foot elevator shared living space to, say, a 1,500 square foot detached house with the property.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate remodel.
And guess what? It's a major upgrade to your life in so many ways. And your rent went from $3,800 a month to $1,500 a month.
$1,500 a month.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's much better. And you have a yard too. And you can get a dog now. So there you go. Okay. So low inflation sectors, energy's been crushed. We all know that because people haven't been moving around. So, we saw oil prices totally collapse. Energy usage. Now, the interesting thing about the electrical energy, okay, there's many types of energy, okay, but the grid has been stressed because everybody being at home uses more energy than everybody being at an office because it's not communal. People, when they leave their house, they wouldn't run their air conditioning all day, yet everybody's in their individual bubble running it instead of in a common office where it's, more efficient and you can cool more people for much less cost and much less taxing, many less kilowatts. But energy for industry and manufacturing, the demand for that just plummeted for quite a while, but it's coming back, as we know. So energy down 18.9%. Okay. Now, apparel, we mentioned this on the show before, but if you talk to apparel companies, they said that apparel for the top half of the body was still selling pretty well, but for the lower half of the body wasn't selling. Meaning people were on video calls and they didn't care what they looked like from the waist down. That is the funniest thing ever. But anyway, yeah.
That is actually an amazing anecdote.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I was thinking on the energy side too, that's very interesting, is that if you have electrical transmission energy, electrical is one of the forms of energy there are actually the most options that don't involve hydrocarbons. And so one of the things that you have with this is you do have an opportunity for an inflection point in trying to reduce overall carbon output. Now this is, of course, assuming that the objective is to reduce carbon output and not to use carbon as a shill to have an authoritarian government rule lives. They already have that. It's called COVID.
Yeah.
They don't need to use climate change for that anymore.
Hey, like the saying goes, green trees have red roots, okay? So, yeah. So now they can do the authoritarian intrude on our lives and tell us what to do thing because they got the guise of the virus to hide under rather than the environment. So, yeah, they can switch. Wag the dog, Hey, everybody, you need to see the old movie from the 90s, Wag the Dog, right now. I'm going to watch it again because this whole COVID thing and race war is the two giant wag the dog things, if you ask me. It's getting quite interesting. Go ahead.
Oh, and the thing that I was thinking, though, is that the notion of the climate changing is real, and, the impact of carbon is real. I think the place where where it's always fallen down is just the assumption that an authoritarian government is the only way to deal with it. If you give the government unlimited authority to deal with the climate, they won't fix the climate. You'll just have an authoritarian government with a climate that is pretty much just as bad as it was before.
Or worse, because if nobody owns if you don't have private ownership of things like we saw in communist Russia, when Greenpeace went in there, I remember reading Greenpeace magazine right after the Soviet Union fell, and they went in and toured the Soviet bloc, Russia and the other countries, and they just saw environmental destruction everywhere. And the article, basically the net of it was that when people, and this is from Greenpeace, a major left-wing group, okay? The net of it was when people don't own property, when they don't own the land, they don't care about it. So,
correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just the dynamics of what we're seeing are just utterly amazing. And I have at least a modest idea of how it's going to shake out. You're going to have, especially in things like airlines, I highly doubt that of course, because airline prices have gone down like 30%, and there's idle capacity everywhere in the aerospace industry. And so that means you're probably going to have at least one major carrier that goes out of business. You're going to have prices stay extremely low for a long time just because there's just so much idle capacity that there's going to be intense competition to try to keep those planes anywhere remotely close to full.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's going to be very long-lasting impacts from all this.
Air travel right now, and this is TSA, so it's not worldwide, but it could be non-domestic flights where someone has to clear TSA. The number of passengers is only 17% of what it was 1 year ago. And it's already coming back. It's better than it was. It was really bad during the worst point in the lockdowns. But right now, it's 17% of last year's number. And that's still, that's a catastrophe. So, yeah. So apparel down 7.9%. Hotels, motels, and lodging down 17.3%. And airfare, Doug, you just said it, down 28.8%. Car and truck rental that you mentioned, down 19.2%. And what's interesting about that one is that car and truck is not split up. And I say that car rental will remain very cheap. By the way, if you're looking for a used car, go to Hertz.com. They are selling thousands of cars. I looked at a few. I was thinking maybe I should pick one up. They're so cheap. You got these, there's just a lot of good deals on those cars. It was pretty attractive. But truck rental, I say, will actually get very inflated during the Great American Move. Now, they're not distinguishing what type of truck, but if they're anything that's a moving truck or a construction truck, that's boom time for that. Yeah. So it's not split up. So, and motor vehicle insurance, because nobody's driving, down 14.3%, but rent CPI, the Consumer Price Index for rent, year over year, up 3.5%. Up 3.5%. In the midst of all that, rents are up. Yeah. Interesting.
No, exactly. Well, I think what all this comes back to is that it's like you said, it really is an amazing time to be alive, and it's an amazing time to be an income property investor. Yeah. I mean, boy, the economy just got shellacked and our properties have just held up beautifully. And they're positioned right in the middle of where everybody's moving to.
Yeah, I know. We're right. Since we sell suburban properties, and this is exactly what everybody wants, we are in a very good position. I mean, I shouldn't say we, I should say you listening. If you're assuming you're following our advice, our plan, our guidance, you are in a very good position. And I got to tell you, I'm just going to be very candid as we wrap it up here, folks. I had a heart-to-heart talk with one of our investment counselors. I mean, we've talked, of course, Doug, but this particular talk that I'm going to recall right now was with Sarah. And, I said, Sarah, we may have to make some really tough decisions in the next 6 months. As this broke out, I was worried. I mean, I didn't know where this was going to go. None of us really even now know where it's going to go. But one thing we know for sure is that, well, a few things we know for sure, I guess I should say. Housing is the center of the universe. People can work remotely. They all have discovered that. People can learn remotely. They don't need to go to an office. They don't need to go to a school. They can do all of that remotely, and they like it, and they've adopted it. And suburban migration is huge, huge, huge.
Yeah.
And interest rates are low. We know that too. So take advantage of it, folks. And Doug, on that note, I'll let you wrap it up.
Basically, we have the strategy. We all know what needs to happen. And now's time to pull the trigger. If there was ever a time to do it, now is the time to do it. It's not the crazy low prices from foreclosures that we saw in 2010. It's the crazy big migration trend that are going to eventually make the prices and rents we're seeing now just seem like pennies.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Doug, well, thank you very much. And if you need us, we're here for you, to guide you, to assist you on your path to building wealth through income property. Reach out to Doug or any of our other investment counselors at jasonhartman.com or by calling 1-800-HARTMAN. If you're in the U.S., that's only a U.S. phone number, 1-800-HARTMAN. If not, catch us on the internet, jasonhartman.com. And until next time, happy investing. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.